I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. Welcome to Chair Waves. My guest today is Adam Harris, who is joining us all the way from New Zealand. And while I know that we have had folks on this podcast from Australia before, never a Kiwi. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Excellent. Now, do they actually? Are you a Hobbit? Is that a thing, or I've always wanted to go to New Zealand just to see the Lord of the Rings stuff, but anyway, I won't.
So the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbiton, it's really actually pretty fantastic. It's a live set that they've kept and kind of turned into a tourist attraction. And if you ever get the chance, it's definitely worthwhile doing. I mean, there's so much to see and do in New Zealand. People often say to me, "How long should I come for?" And most people will come for kind of 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
I say it's never enough. There's so much to do here. It's beautiful.
Awesome. Well, good to know. And thank you for joining me. And as we were talking before we got started, it is it's lunchtime for me here in Denver, Colorado, but it's 6 a.m. where you are. So I really appreciate you getting up early to be my guest.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And again, congrats on being our first Kiwi guest. That's also an honor. If postage wasn't so expensive, I might send you a Kiwi to commemorate it, but you can go to the grocery store and buy your own. So you are, and typically our guests are Vistage chairs on this podcast, but your tale is kind of interesting in that you are currently not a Vistage chair.
Yep.
But you were a Vistage chair, and you intend to be again.
Yeah.
So tell me that story before we get into anything else. I would love to hear that story.
Yeah. So I became a chair at 31 years old. So I was the youngest Vistage chair in the world for about 8 years.
Wow.
And you
held on to that for 8 whole years.
Yeah. I came across Vistage. I can't even actually remember, but I ended up going to a kind of an open session, and I just fell in love with the concept of kind of experiential learning. It just really kind of resonated with me. And the chair the chair of the group that I kind of went to visit was like, "Are you good? Do you want to join the group?" I was like, "I'm absolutely keen." But at the time, I was the CEO. I was in a big merger with an American organization, and I anticipated that I was going to be kind of let go as the CEO. So 9 months later, that actually transpired and happened. So I actually came to New Zealand with the family to kind of do 3 months worth of traveling, got back to the UK, and the chair said, "So, Adam, do you want to join the group?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not a CEO anymore." So he says, "Well, what are you going to do?" I says, "Actually, I don't really know." So he said, "If what do you think about potentially becoming a Vistage chair?" I'm like, "Well, first and foremost, I love the concept." I said, my observation is that all of the chairs have got 10 years plus of kind of C-level experience. They've probably got hair and it's grey, and I'm not sure if I really kind of fit the kind of the characteristics and tick any of the boxes. So I thought, what? Look, I'll just go through the process. And the more I did, the more I fell in love. Went over to San Diego. And
at this point, though,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but at this point in your story, you're probably 30 years old, which is in today's by today's standard, a young man by almost any measure.
Mm.
What made what prompted that individual to tell you, you know what, you should be a chair? What do you think like actually started that conversation? Because it would have taken quite obviously that's somebody who thought very highly of you to think that you would have the ability to offer that at 30 years old.
Yeah. It's a great question. My my natural ability has always been to being just incredibly inquisitive and coming at a place from wonderment. And I didn't necessarily realize at the time, but I had this knack for just asking really kind of deep questions and kind of peeling away the layers, but doing it from a kind of really disarmed perspective. And he obviously saw something in me that I wasn't able to realize at that moment in time. I went over to do my training at the time. It was called Studio 6 over in San Diego. Um, and that week for me was absolutely life changing. Like, um, being there, I still keep in touch with, with many of the chairs that I did my training with. We had the highest cohort success rate. So chairs such as Jay McDonald, Artie Isaac, Troy
Yeah.
Wright.
Artie's
Um,
been a guest on this show.
yeah, interesting with Artie. So me and Artie became really, really close. And every time that I'd come over to the US for Chair World, I'd spend a week with him either before or after,
Hmm.
and spend time with his group and with his family, and we've become really kindred spirits. And often, we'd when with Chair World, we'd often do another trip as well. I remember going to Joshua Tree at least 3 times, Joshua Tree National Park, and
Hmm.
we'd be on our walks, and like at any one moment, we never knew who was in what state of kind of going, friend, coach, mentor, and we're just kind of weaving in and out in our conversations. So yeah, I Artie holds a big place in my heart.
Artie's a good guy. He's good people. So that's pretty cool. So you become a chair,
Yep,
and at 31 you start your first group.
yep.
So what was that process like for you, and being so young, and being not only new as a Vistage chair, but also new as a coach, because that wasn't your role at your you were a CEO, right?
Yeah.
So how was that process for you, and what did it teach you to start your first group at 31?
Yeah, so I kind of, the training or the suggestion was is to kind of go out to your existing network. And the observation I found was is that as I was speaking to people who are within my network, my background was kind of IT technology and education. So the perception of people, they struggle to see me in that role as a coach. So whilst I anticipated that my group would come from my existing network, in the early stages it didn't. So I had to. I ended up kind of almost had this situation where I had this burning platform where I needed to launch the group within kind of a 3 month period, and I think that energy forced me to kind of have conversations, put myself in places which A, I hadn't been before, but B, probably at the time was really uncomfortable, and ended up launching my group within kind of 10 weeks. So kind of got back from the training and and was pretty fast to launch. And then all of a sudden, I'm there on my first meeting, and I can kind of still picture it now, kind of turning up to the venue, and it was like I just embraced the whole situation, and then it really probably wasn't until about 2.5 years in that I kind of turned around and realized wow, this is what I'm doing. How the hell did I get to this point? You know,
Right.
I had massive imposter syndrome for a long time because both at the kind of UK chair gathering, but then also kind of going to chair worlds, and meeting such amazing people with such great stories and wisdom. It's like, how am I in this place?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I just realized that the skill and the expertise that I'd obviously had for a long time of kind of holding space for other people. That's my kind of sweet spot in just being able to bring people into a place, allow them to feel comfortable, and go to the challenging places.
So so you were a chair in the UK. You were 31. You uh, you had the group for 8 years, and what happened then? Vistage said, "Hey, now you're too old. We're not going to let you. We
No,
can't
so
we can't have you at 40." Um,
yeah. So interestingly, what happened was is that I was seeing such amazing, inspirational speakers, thought leaders, authors, a number of which were kind of economists or futurists. And I don't know, I just started to get this feeling, and it was a feeling, that having two young daughters, that the UK and Europe specifically was not going to be the right place to bring up the family. So I just felt this. I felt this need and this urge that um, I needed to provide something different for my daughters. I needed to give them choice. So we made a decision to that we were going to move the family, having read and done some work with traction and entrepreneurial operating system. We set ourselves a 10-year target, myself and my wife, that we were going to live nomadically. Um, and within the space of a year, originally we were looking at moving to the south of England, and then we came back to another trip to New Zealand, and we just felt a drawing and a need to kind of move over here. So, we're now at the stage of kind of early 2019, and we'd made a decision that we were going to move to New Zealand. So I spoke to the UK head office for Vistage and said, look, I said, we've made this decision. My groups want to carry on working with me. So we've already agreed that I'll come back for the retreat and I'll come back a second time, and the rest of the time we'll work remotely. Running the group and doing one to ones. And the response that I got was, this can't be done. It needs to be in person. So regrettably, I had to kind of step away from kind of being a chair. So we move over to New Zealand December 2019. The kids start school in the February because the terms are different here because it's summer
right,
uh, on the opposite side. And then, like literally about 4 weeks after the kids start school, we're kind of into lockdown.
right.
COVID hits, and all of a sudden, I suddenly get loads of my chair colleagues from across the world contacting me saying, "Adam, I know that you've been doing stuff online. Help! What do I do? How do I run my group?" So I went into kind of service mode and was supporting so many people to just help them understand at the time something that was kind of new and different. So yeah,
And of course, literally months after they told you that groups could not be led virtually, the
yeah,
entire Vistage universe was doing just that.
yeah, yeah.
Does it make you wish at all that you had not told them, and just sort of rolled into it, and then they figured it out later on? But hey, it's working.
Um, yeah. Part of me thinks that. I've never been a conformist. I've always felt as if I've fought the man, or done against the system. Um, I felt some peace knowing that as a duty of care is that in fact, interestingly, one of my old members contacted me yesterday, knowing that I'd handed them over to another chair who served and supported them well. Um, that was comforting and important to me. Um, interestingly, now as a Vistage speaker, um, I often start when I'm communicating through to the group and say, look, I'm a chair first, I'm a speaker second. And I had a situation only last month where I was with a group. My sessions tend to be quite
Mm-hmm.
deep. I do a lot of retreats. And within the first first 20 minutes, with some of the questions that I'd asked, one of the members um, I'm not going to say broke down because that's not fair. Showed high levels of emotion, and there was something that they were sitting with. And I went where I needed to go as a chair, not as a speaker. Just held the space, allowed the group to support the individual, and it was just it was an honor and beautiful to be able to be in a position that I could do what I needed to do for the member at that moment in time.
That's terrific. Tell me about your journey as a speaker.
So long before I became a Vistage chair, I just used to convene lots of kind of, I don't know, business groups and bring people together. And I was observing, and I just remember again distinctly sitting in a room, and we'd had this speaker, and I said, well, they were quite egotistical. It was all very much about themselves. I'm not sure what value they added. And somebody turned around and said, well, if you think you could do any better, why don't you? I'm like, oh,
Done.
okay. Um, so I then kind of started the journey for me of then just and again for me, I suppose my mission statement is that I create a world of change, challenge, and growth by holding space, pushing the boundaries, and asking the questions that nobody else feels comfortable to do so. So that kind of mantra for me is important to hold the space. And I kind of had this visceral feeling within me is that if I feel some tension or I feel uncomfortable, then I'm playing in the right space because I know that for me, by pushing those boundaries and asking those questions, is going to help the individual or the group of people that are in front of me.
And now, in addition to that, you're looking at actually getting back into chairing.
Yeah. I've been speaking in Australia, New Zealand, at a number of Vistage groups. I'm often speaking, and one of the things that I really loved doing, Eric, was one of my groups that I co-chaired, and I for me found that experience to be just phenomenal. The ability to kind of co-collaborate with another chair, not just outside of the
Mm-hmm.
room, but inside of the room, and one of you be at the front of the room, the other one be kind of sat around the table. It's something that I would highly encourage more people to do because it's just the connection, um, the expression, and the value that comes from for the group is it's just truly wonderful. So I'm constantly speaking to a number of chairs. I'd love to co-chair if there is an opportunity. It feels it's a case of when. Interestingly, as we record this, my wife is actually looking at becoming a chair.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it is for me personally. It's a matter of time.
Okay. Very cool. What's the how would you characterize the similarities and differences between what you experienced with the Vistage community in the UK versus New Zealand?
Oh, okay. So New Zealand culturally, from a business perspective, is quite different. So um, a lot of the businesses here are there's a lot of very small businesses. The typically the larger businesses are actually either American owned or Australian owned. So the kind of sweet spot or target market for Vistage is actually quite small.
Gotcha.
Um, you then kind of look at the culturally here. Coaching and self development is quite a way behind the UK and America, and then the value exchange from a pricing perspective is not quite there. So there's very much a case of, why would I need somebody to challenge my assumptions?
Right.
She'll be all right. There's very much an aspect of kind of, we'll find a way to kind of sort things out. The innovation and creativity is quite high, but the need for that kind of challenge, that external challenge, is not particularly high. From a male specific perspective, suicide rates here are pretty high. That the aspect of kind of sharing and having open conversations again is quite surface level. So culturally, it's actually quite challenging, and a number of the chairs over the years have not managed to kind of grow significant numbers or groups. So at the moment, there's probably 4 or 5 groups across the whole of New Zealand, and there's probably only one chair that's doing really well and kind of succeeding.
That's a difficult environment for somebody to come into. How are you tackling that?
So for me, I actually spend quite a bit of time over in Australia. So I have a base out of Melbourne.
Okay.
So and interestingly, if I go back to kind of mine and my wife's 10-year target in living nomadically, Australia is the natural next step for us. So my youngest daughter is kind of 14. So I would anticipate that if when the chairing opportunity comes around, it's probably more likely going to be in Australia than it would be here in New Zealand.
As somebody who has done it with some success, and now looking at potentially uh, doing it again, and well, maybe not potentially. You kind of said it's not really a question of if; it's a question of when. Um,
Mm.
what what's changed? What important has changed in the time between when you were chairing and now having this break? Um,
Mm.
I'd be curious to know what perspective this break has given you. But I'd also like to ask what advice you have for people who are in the process of becoming chairs, and it is challenging. I'd love to hear a little bit of all of that if you can.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I've seen and observed is the landscape has changed. So I think 15, 20 years ago, it felt as if Vistage was really the only option or one of the only options at that moment in time. Um, the competitors or the similarities of other offerings is far greater now than I feel that there was before. I also observed that the needs and the wants of CEOs, MDs, founders is quite different. So as I meet and speak to a lot of I suppose younger, their need and their desire is quite different. So the model of kind of sitting in a group for a full day, for kind of baby boomers, and I'm generalizing here, but that was kind of the only space that they potentially could feel held. I'm observing that a lot of the younger uh, CEOs or demographic, first and foremost, they're using AI as a challenge to look at their assumptions and their thoughts. They're they're also quite happy to go out and speak to the people that potentially are going to be able to give them the input or the guidance or the support. And actually, their time, they don't want to build up and potentially watch a 3-hour speaker or sit in a speaker session. They want to get straight to the juicy stuff, and they want it within 20 minutes. So I feel that and that's not to say that running a group for a full day is not going to work. It's just actually understanding how do you have that slightly different conversation with the kind of value proposition. I think the one thing that that Vistage has, which is, if as I look at it, is the issue processing piece is so fundamental to the proposition, and getting people to experience that is so important, and however that kind of comes about. But when somebody sits there, and I don't think it's for everybody, I think that's really important, but being held and supported, and going through the issue processing, and being in a group that you build the relationships and the trust and the challenge as a collective group. I remember in the training, you might join, for the chair, or you might join for yourself, but you stay for the group. The group almost has its own identity, its own energy, and it's very difficult to kind of explain any of that. If I was advising somebody now, I would be saying, tune in and trust your instinct. Just be yourself, and build the group that you want to build, whatever that kind of looks like. Size of group, number, demographic of people sitting in the room. The other thing I'd say is that the chair community is like nothing that I've ever seen before. The wisdom, the care, the knowledge, the experience. There is so many people that have trodden the path before. I would absolutely be tapping into those on a global perspective that can support, challenge, and help through the journey.
Very cool. And now your current gig, what you do for businesses now, as you head towards your journey back towards chairdom.
Yep.
You're an EOS implementer.
Yeah. So I've now been an EOS implementer for the last 5 years. I often say to people, and they don't necessarily understand this. I'm like, I was a Vistage chair. I ran CEO peer groups. So I'm going to bring all of the experience that I've got from that perspective, into the session room. So if you want surface level conversations, that's great. I'm not the right person for you. If you want to go deep and work on the real issues that we need to work on to move the organization and the teams forward, let's go. So yeah, I'm truly grateful for my chair experience, because I bring all of that into the session room when I'm working with the clients. The clients that I work with across Australia and New Zealand, but I actually love working with globally distributed teams. So a lot of the teams I work with, their leadership teams are across the globe.
Well, Adam, I really appreciate your time. You've been a wonderful guest. If folks have questions about EOS, if they have questions about what it's like to be a chair, if they want to know what you're having for second breakfast in New Zealand, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch is go to my website, www.frankandfearless.com, and you can get me on adam@frankandfearless.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.